The first thing I noticed was the cold. Not the pain, not even the blood, but the cold tile pressed against my cheek, pulling the heat from my skin like it had a right to it. The taste of metal coated my tongue, thick and sharp. I tried to inhale, and pain rippled through my ribs like warning flares. I blinked, my vision blurring and clearing in waves until I saw his shoes. Declan's shoes, just a few feet away from my face. He wasn't speaking. He wasn't helping. He just stood there for a moment like he had somewhere better to be. And then he turned, stepped over my legs like I was a misplaced rug, and walked out of the apartment. I heard the door shut behind him with a casual click. I waited, for footsteps coming back, for Brielle's voice, for anything that would make sense of what had just happened. But the silence stayed. My phone buzzed weakly against the floor beside me, the screen cracked but still alive. I rolled just enough to see the message. "Stay away from us." I stared at it. The words didn't sting. They sliced. She didn't ask if I was okay, didn't apologize, didn't even pretend to be confused. She had chosen him fully and without hesitation, and in doing so, she had unchosen me. My fingers trembled as I typed back a single word. Done. I didn't cry. Not yet. Something was shifting quiet seismic. It wasn't that I stopped loving my sister in that moment, it was that I stopped asking her to love me back. I sat up slowly, using the countertop to brace myself. Every breath was a reminder, but not the kind that begged for pity. The kind that tells you you're still alive, still capable, still in control of something. And in that silence, something unfamiliar settled inside me. It wasn't rage. It was resolve. Even before the bruises had started to bloom, I knew the pain ran deeper than that night. This didn't start with Declan's fist. It didn't even start with Brielle's silence. It started years ago in smaller ways when being overlooked was called keeping the peace. I was always the one who made things easier, the one who got straight A's without needing praise, who brought her own snacks to family trips so Mom wouldn't have to pack extra, the one who folded laundry at 14 because Brielle wasn't good at it, and who stayed quiet at dinner so my father wouldn't snap when he was tired. Brielle, she was sunshine. Even when she did nothing, she shimmered. I still remember the year she got hired at a boutique in the mall. My mother acted like she'd landed on Forbes' list. "She's finding herself," she said to anyone who'd listen. That same week, I'd been promoted to lead UX designer for a national campaign. When I shared the news over dinner, my mother smiled thinly and said, "That's great, honey, but just don't lose sight of the bigger picture, marriage, a family." My achievements were fine as long as they didn't get too loud, as long as they didn't make anyone else uncomfortable. When Brielle got engaged to Declan, the whole family buzzed like he was royalty. Finally, Mom whispered to me once, "She's got her future in place. Now we just need to find someone for you." Like I was a glitch needing repair, like my life without a man was an unfinished sentence. That's when it really clicked. I wasn't their daughter. I was their backup plan, their extra set of hands, their emergency contact, the one they could lean on when things fell apart and ignore when they didn't. I let it happen. I folded myself smaller and smaller until all that was left was the version of me that kept everything functioning. But when I felt that tile against my cheek when my sister told me to stay away, I realized something that cracked through years of conditioning I had been built to be forgotten, and I was finally ready to disappear on my own terms. I reached for my phone again this time, not to reply, but to check something else. The mortgage pre-approval was still sitting in my inbox. I scrolled past the highlighted terms, the digital signature field already flagged with my name. I had almost forgotten it was there almost. It started months ago when Brielle and Declan came to me in a panic over their financing. They'd been denied once already. Declan's credit was a mess from 2 previous business ventures that folded within a year. Brielle was freelancing sporadic income and inconsistent tax records. They needed someone stable, solid, a sure thing. They needed me. "We just need your name on the paperwork," Brielle had said, her voice coated in ease like it wasn't a big ask. "You won't be responsible unless something goes wrong. Something always goes wrong." I helped anyway. I sat with Declan to comb through his credit report, walking him through how to challenge the collections and negotiate settlements. I even connected them with a mortgage advisor I trusted. I fronted the move-in deposit when Brielle's first payment was delayed. No repayment plan, no contracts, just faith. Just family. When I brought up my hesitations softly, carefully, Brielle brushed them off. "You're being dramatic. It's just paperwork." Declan laughed and clinked his beer against mine. "You're like the third wheel we actually need." At the time, I told myself it was a compliment. That being needed was a kind of love, that what I gave would come back when it mattered. But standing in my apartment now, ribs aching and face still swollen, I saw every detail differently. Every favor, every signature, every dollar it hadn't drawn us closer. It had tied me down, not as a sister, as an asset. They hadn't just expected me to show up. They'd built their life, assuming I would. I closed the mortgage email and opened a different tab, my bank's login page. The loan wasn't final yet, and my name was still there. It started with a question. That's what I keep coming back to. Just a question. We were standing in my kitchen finalizing dinner plans after looking over the wedding budget together. Declan had suggested cutting the catering team down to just 2 staff to save some cash, even though the guest list had recently doubled. I said gently, "Are you sure that's smart? That kind of corner cutting could end up being more expensive later." Brielle tensed immediately. "Camille, we've got it under control." I didn't press, just nodded. But Declan must have caught something in my face, doubt maybe. That was enough. He slammed his palm on the countertop and snapped, "You think just because you make more money, you get to judge everything we do?" I froze. "That's not what I—" He stepped closer. "You think you're so much better than us?" "Always have." His voice was getting louder, hotter. I instinctively stepped back, bumping into the island behind me. I glanced at Brielle, expecting her to say something to diffuse him like she always did, but she didn't. Then came the shove. I hit the counter hard, the edge digging into my ribs. I gasped, stunned, but before I could react, he swung. A closed fist, right across my mouth. The taste of blood came instantly. The world went sideways. And then I was on the floor, the tile rushing up to meet me. But that's not what I remember most. What I remember is Brielle, standing there, watching, not moving, not shouting his name or running to me, just still, like she was weighing something. When they left, I stayed down. For seconds or minutes, I don't know. Eventually, I reached for my phone. Mariah answered on the second ring. "Camille, I couldn't speak. I just cried. When I finally choked out what happened, every word, thick with shame and disbelief, she didn't hesitate. "This isn't a misunderstanding," she said, voice sharp with clarity. "It's assault, and you need to report it." She stayed on the phone as I pulled myself to my feet and made my way to the bathroom mirror. My reflection didn't look like me, but it was time she did. The next morning, I moved like I was made of glass, slow, careful, deliberate. Every part of my body protested, but my mind had never felt clearer. There was no fog, no doubt. I opened my laptop and signed into the bank's portal. The mortgage file was right at the top, flagged as pending. $820,000, approved conditionally, co-signed by me. I stared at the screen for a long time. My name was everywhere on the pre-approval, the liability breakdown, the repayment schedule. I'd made this possible. Without me, they were a couple with inconsistent income and a credit history that read like a cautionary tale. I started the revocation process. It wasn't a simple click. It was 3 verification steps, a phone notification, and a warning message in red. This action may result in cancellation of the loan agreement. Proceed only if you understand the legal and financial consequences. I clicked yes. Another pop-up appeared. Are you sure? Yes. Security questions followed. My first pet's name, my mother's maiden name. That one stung. Then came the final screen, a legal form dry and clinical. At the bottom was a signature line. One signature to undo every time I'd chosen to help them over helping myself. I rested my fingers on the mouse. They had expected me to keep giving, to stay silent, to keep my name attached even after they tore me away. But I wasn't their anchor anymore. I wasn't their insurance policy. I clicked sign. A small check mark appeared, followed by "Your guarantor agreement has been successfully withdrawn." I closed the laptop and let the silence settle. It wasn't heavy, it was clean. Somewhere in the city, they were probably finalizing centerpieces or comparing paint swatches. They had no idea the foundation of their dream house had just disappeared. And I wasn't done. Not yet. The call came just after noon. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. Declan's voice exploded through the speaker, panicked, high-pitched, nothing like the man who had stood smug in my kitchen 2 nights ago. "Camille, what the hell did you do?" he barked. "The bank called. They said the guarantor pulled out. The loan's been denied. You killed this deal. Do you even understand what you've done?" I said nothing, just let the silence expand until it made him squirm. Then I answered calm and clear. I did what Brielle asked. "I'm staying away." I hung up before he could respond. An hour later, the banging started. Not knocking, banging. My front door rattled under their fists. I watched from the peephole as Brielle paced like a woman unhinged, her eyes wild. "Camille, open this door right now," she screamed. "You are ruining everything." Declan was behind her, trying to soften the performance. "Just talk to us," he said. "Please. Think of Mom. Think of everything we've all been through." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stood behind the door and watched them unravel. When they finally left, their voices trailing into the hallway, I sat down at my kitchen table and opened a new folder on my desktop. I titled it Court Evidence. One by one, I added the photos, the swelling, the bruise on my ribs, the split in my lip, the screenshot of Brielle's text, the withdrawal confirmation from the bank. I wasn't building a case out of revenge. I was building it because I knew people like them, people who'd twist a story until the truth suffocated under guilt and reputation and family ties. But I had something new now. I had documentation. And I had no intention of being quiet ever again. The next morning, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Then, another call came through. And another. By the 4th, I answered. Her voice came through tight with frustration. "Camille, what is going on? Brielle told me you pulled your name from the loan. Are you really willing to destroy your sister's future over a disagreement?" "A disagreement." I didn't speak. I wanted to ask if she knew about the bruises, about the punch, about the silence Brielle chose. But I didn't, because I already knew the answer. "You've always been so dramatic," she continued. "You push people away and then act like the victim. I raised 2 daughters. I won't let one tear the other down out of spite." I hung up. A few hours later, my Aunt Carol called. I hadn't spoken to her in months. She launched in without even saying hello. "Your mother told me everything. I'm just so disappointed, Camille. Your sister's under stress. The wedding, the house, it's a lot. You should be supporting her, not punishing her." I almost laughed. That was the moment it all crystallized. This wasn't about a punch or a mortgage. It was about roles, ones I was never meant to leave. Brielle was the one who stumbled, and I was the one who stayed quiet. That was the balance they all depended on. They weren't calling to understand. They were calling to restore the order. But I wasn't returning to it. I blocked their numbers and added the voicemails to the folder. It wasn't just Brielle and Declan anymore. It was the whole system. And I was done playing my part in it. The envelope arrived on a Thursday, thick official and stamped with courthouse ink. A temporary restraining order, filed by Brielle. I read it once, then again, and still couldn't believe what it said. According to her sworn statement, I was unstable, obsessed, and had violently confronted her out of jealousy. She called me dangerous, a threat. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not from fear, but from the precision of the lie. She was trying to flip the script, make me the monster in the very story I'd bled in. But I had evidence. And I had Ayla Connors. My lawyer was sharp, unshaken, and knew exactly what we were walking into. The courtroom was small, but packed. Brielle dabbed at her dry eyes. Declan sat beside her, lips tight. My mother wouldn't even look at me. Their attorney opened with practiced sympathy, painting me as a vindictive sister bent on ruining a happy couple's future. They twisted every fact into suspicion, every silence into guilt. And then it was our turn. Ayla didn't posture. She laid out facts. First, the photos high-resolution time-stamped. My face, my ribs, my split lip. Next, the medical report, blunt force trauma, internal bruising consistent with physical assault. Finally, the footage, grainy, silent, undeniable. The courtroom went still as the video played. Brielle lunging, me shoved backward, Declan watching and walking away. The judge turned to them after a long silence. Petition denied, she said sharply. And consider yourself fortunate Ms. Reyes isn't filing charges. They didn't speak. They couldn't. I didn't celebrate. I just gathered my things, nodded at Ayla, and walked out with Mariah. But the hallway wasn't empty. Not yet. She was waiting for me just outside the courtroom, shoulders tense, mascara smudged like she wanted it to look accidental. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time there was no spark of certainty behind them. "Camille," she said, voice low and shaky. "Can we just talk?" I didn't stop walking. She caught up beside me, reaching lightly for my arm. I pulled back. "I didn't know it would get this far," she said quickly. Declan said. She stopped the sentence, collapsing under its own weight. I turned just enough to face her. "You stood there. You let him hit me. You watched me on the floor and said nothing, and then you called me dangerous. Cam, I didn't mean you are no longer my sister. It wasn't anger in my voice. It was stillness, and something in her recognized it. Her mouth parted like she wanted to argue or cry or beg, but nothing came out. She just stood there, small and wordless, as I walked away. Outside the courthouse, the air felt thin and sharp. Mariah was waiting with the car, and when I slid into the passenger seat, neither of us spoke. She just drove one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly near mine. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my phone. One by one, I deleted their numbers: Brielle, Declan, my mother, my aunt. Then I opened my laptop and created a new email folder. Peace. I didn't move the voicemails or screenshots there. I didn't need to. That folder wasn't for evidence. It was for the things I was learning to protect. And for the first time in years, I shut my computer without bracing for what might come next. A year passed like a season. I had finally stopped resisting. I poured myself into work, not to forget, but to remember what I was capable of. I led a major product launch, took over as department head, and stopped apologizing for knowing what I was doing. On Tuesday nights, I took a ceramics class at the community center. My hands learned to shape what once felt impossible to hold. Clay didn't care about my past. It just responded to pressure, consistency, and patience. By November, my apartment was warm with the hum of voices and laughter. I hosted Friendsgiving for the first time. Mariah brought wine. Nate made a weirdly perfect turkey. We sat on mismatched chairs and passed food over stories that made us laugh until we cried. It was everything my family dinners weren't. Then last week, a letter arrived. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. I didn't open it right away. I didn't need to. That night, I stood over the recycling bin and quietly tore it in half. Then, in quarters. No anger, just finality. Out on my balcony, the cactus I bought after the hearing had bloomed. A single pink flower, small but defiant, perched at the top like a flag. I watered it slowly, then sat beside it, legs tucked under me, listening to the wind. I used to think strength meant never cracking. Now I know it's what you grow in the cracks.